and because there's pluses, there's negatives, and now that you know the advantages and the disadvantages, now you can go out and make an educated decision. That's what it's all about eventually, right? It's just making that educated decision for yourself. And hey, what's up, you guys? It's your boy Juju, and welcome back to another episode of the 1% of Juju podcast, where we teach you the practical steps to live your life like the 1%. So glad to be back. As always, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you like, review, all of that good jazz after the podcast. But as you guys can probably see, you guys probably have realized that we are back on social media. Really excited to be back and really thankful for my team for the hard work that they put in for the rebranding. You guys can see we have a new logo, new intro, all these different things. Really happy with the people that we worked with. Some huge shout outs to obviously the girls on my social team, Taylor and Paulina. You guys are absolutely amazing. And also our partner that we worked with, Sachem, who designed our logo. So thank you so much. If you guys want a referral, he's absolutely amazing. We'll work with you and has done really great work for us. So really happy with all of that. Make sure you guys go check it out. Social media, all the links are in the description. 1% of Juju on all platforms, but really excited. Thank you for the support. I came back to social media with a lot of positive messages. Some people talking about, whether it's purchasing their first property or really good returns on their investments. I think I probably have nothing to do with your returns on your investments. It's just the fact that you're probably in there at the right timing, or whenever you invested in whatever you did, probably did the right thing. But no, those are really always, they make me feel good overall. I think that especially this thing is a grind, man. So can keep those messages coming. If you're experiencing, I don't need to expose them or anything like that. But whenever you guys have them, they do mean a lot to me. So keep them coming. It definitely means a lot. So that is that. The last thing I want to cover is sorry, I'm going to get into this episode, but my sound in the past few weeks, thank you so much for sticking with me, but my sound in the past few weeks, I've had a couple issues. There's been a lot of fixes. I'm working on a few things. I got a couple new pieces of equipment. It is not due to lack of preparation or me not caring. I take great pride in this podcast. This podcast is like my little baby. I do a lot of sound checks and things like that. But I've just been having a lot of troubles in the past few weeks. So I'm really hoping that it is fixed now. So let's fingers crossed. Let me know in the comments section if those are fixed at this point, and if you guys are experiencing less issues when you guys are listening to me. So those are a couple things, but today's topic, we're going to talk about the Great Resignation. I'm really excited to talk about this topic to some extent, what it is, what it's all about. And then we're going to obviously get into some practical things for you that you can take with you. I'm going to take a second to breathe here, but obviously I never want to just leave a podcast with just speaking about something. I always want to make sure that it's practical and that you can take something away for yourself. So what even is this Great Resignation? So in 2021, a large amount of people, when I looked it up, right, a large amount of people departed from their jobs, creating what we now refer to as the Great Resignation. People depart from their job for a variety of reasons. People were chasing more money. They wanted more fulfilling careers, whatever that means. More flexibility. A lot of people wanted to work from home, and others realized that work from home really wasn't suitable. I'm thinking about a variety of people, right? Because right now I see a lot of people on LinkedIn. They're maybe posting pictures of themselves working with their kid on their lap, and it sounds amazing, and we're all liking and things like that. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to run a meeting with a group of executives, it probably isn't ideal to have your baby on your lap. And babies, sometimes they cry, and sometimes they need food and things of that nature. And it doesn't always align with the time you have to present your part of the presentation, right? So it's not easy. Now, it's not to say that people aren't doing it and aren't doing great at it, and a lot of people are adapting to it, and we're working through it. But at the same time, it still brings some difficulties that a lot of people weren't ready for, right? We lost a lot of people to the workforce. In the workforce, we lost a lot of people that just realized like, this isn't for me. Like I can't do this. I can't do this work from home. So, and some companies, right, weren't as aggressive as far as coming back to the office and then trying to make that shift, because they just assume like, well, everyone's enjoying working from home, so we're just going to continue doing that, save on the office costs and things of that nature. But that just wasn't ideal for everyone. So some people left for that reason. Um, but overall, I think that when I looked it up and I started taking a look, well, obviously, Great Resignation, I spoke about it. It was in 2021, right? And I'm here speaking about it in May of 2022. So obviously, I'm kind of late to it, right? Because I didn't really see it. So even when I looked at it, a couple months later, and I started hearing about it and I started reading about it and all these things, and I heard about it in other podcasts and people were speaking about it. And I realized, I was like, I think that the Great Resignation is a very big lie, right? Because I don't necessarily come on here and say a lot of anecdotal things. I try to keep things as far as generalities, things that can help the masses and things of that nature. But at the same time, I didn't see a bunch of people resigning left and right during the pandemic, right? So this is a little anecdotal, but I did see a variety of businesses shut down, right? And their employees lose their business during the pandemic, right? Employees struggle and not knowing where their next paycheck is going to come from, where their next meal, where their next rent payment is going to come from. Businesses not know, people working their whole life as far as, trying to sustain a business, and that being taken away completely from them in a matter of couple months. I saw a lot of single moms fight to keep the lights on, try to, to keep their job so that they can support their families. I saw a lot of kids, in schools not have parents around to teach them because they had to go to their essential worker job and things of that nature. And I saw, I saw a lot of people trying to find jobs, a lot of people job hunting, looking for jobs, even right now, that they're still looking, people that I've mentored, people that I worked with that are still looking for work, right? That aren't part of this Great Resignation. I would love if they were able to just resign and take a little extra money somewhere else. And I've seen a lot of immigrants that are more than qualified for some positions still struggle to find jobs as they were immigrating to Canada. So I looked at this Great Resignation, and like it almost like irks me a little bit, because we act like it's just this widespread thing that applies to everybody and everyone's just leaving and resigning from their job. And in reality, when you really think about it, it really doesn't apply to anyone. Right. And like I said, I didn't know about it for the longest time, even though it affected my world. But I really just looked at it and I was like, this isn't real. This is fake. Right. Because it only applies to really people in technology, people that were in SaaS, people that were in SaaS sales specifically, and people of a certain level. Right. So if you're this entry level person, you're not affected by the Great Resignation. And some people were, right. Some people like the top 1% of those entry level guys probably were. They entered in one company and they got an offer at the next one. But it wasn't, right, this thing that was just all over the place. And if you really think about it, what it came down to, it ended up being just this one person leaving one firm, going to the next one, and this person goes to the next one, then this person goes to the next one, right? So think about like the Googles, the Amazon, the Facebooks, all of that, right? So it was one person leaves Google, goes to Facebook, one person leaves Facebook, goes to Amazon, leaves Amazon, goes to Salesforce, goes to Oracle, goes to here, and people are just moving around, and these companies are like, well, I'm trying to grow, but there's no growth happening because you're just trading one person from one place to another. So if you're a sports fan, you can think about like just an even trade, right? Where you're like, well, you trade one quarterback for another quarterback. I don't know whose team really got better because it just is what it is, unless you're, the Detroit Lions and the LA Rams. But this was a weird football and NFL analogy, and maybe some of you guys don't even watch football. So we're just going to keep it going and ignore the fact that I just said that. But that's essentially what it was. And before anyone goes here and calls me just salty because of that, listen, I was also a beneficiary of the Great Resignation, in my career, and then also somewhat helped my business personally, I would say, everything that was happening. But I still think that it's not fair to so many people that call that the Great Resignation, because there's I don't know. I just think that sometimes we want to be sensitive in how, the wordage that we use and the language that we use, because not everyone is experiencing things the same way. So what I want to talk about today is a variety of things, right? So number one, we're going to talk about the downsides of the risks of the Great Resignation. Number two, we're going to talk about why you shouldn't pay attention to it, why, whether you're part of some of those industries or you're not, why you shouldn't pay attention to it. And number three, how you can take advantage, because when there is downsides, there's also upsides, right? So I'm rarely very opinionated when I come on here. I give you like the perspectives and like the what it is, and then you do whatever you want with that information. And because there's pluses, there's negatives, and now that you know the advantages and the disadvantages, now you can go out and make an educated decision. That's what it's all about eventually, right? It's just making that educated decision for yourself and getting yourself in the best position as possible. So number one, the downside of this Great Resignation. So let's talk about it for a little bit. There's a CBS survey that came out late last year, I believe, maybe earlier in this year. 1 in 5 people who left their job during that time, during that Great Resignation, regrets it. And I'll link the article below so you guys can actually read the study, how it was done and things of that nature. And the reality is that most people leave their jobs, because they want things like more money or more responsibilities. And a lot of people, upon jumping in those new positions, they realize that the grass maybe isn't always greener on the other side. I share that with a lot of my friends in general. So I thought that I'd come on here on my podcast because I can and share that with you guys. It's just a lot of them, they've been job hopping in the past few years and always, seem to convince themselves that the culture or management is just bad. And then I start realizing, I'm like, maybe that's not the problem. There's a chance that you are the problem. And before you attack me and you're like, no, the culture as a whole just needs to change, I don't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with you as a person, right? I'm just saying that maybe you have the wrong expectations, right? If you were making 60K and you left for a job that will pay you 120K and manage a team of 5, what do they now expect from you? Right? Like, what is the expectation from you when you're now moving into this different job, right? So understanding, okay, what is it with these added responsibilities, with this added money, what is the change and commitment that they want from me and how committed they want me to be to a company? What are you willing to trade off? And that's okay, right? For you, you might be like, okay, well, I just want the money out of a job, right? That's the kind of person, like, to be honest, like, even for myself, sometimes I think that that's how I am, is I don't really care about any politics or anything or the culture, things like that. Like, obviously it's enjoyable when you get along with your coworkers, but I think that that's never been the most important thing for me. Is like, I look at things, and I think I'll speak about it a little bit more, as a mutual exchange, right? So as long as you're fine with that and you're willing to trade that off, maybe you're willing to trade off and spend a little bit of more time than anybody else at work so that you make a little bit more, so you get that promotion a little faster. So maybe you're looking for more, of that balance, of that work-life balance and things of that nature. Understand that, but what are you willing to trade off, and be honest with yourself, because I kind of ask myself all the time, like, how realistic is it that a place will offer you'll leave a place? And I hear that from some of my friends all the time, right? They're like, they leave a job that they hated, and then they're the new job for like a month, and then they're like, oh yeah, guys, I make more money, I have more responsibilities, it's more flexible, I can work from home, there's less expectations on me, I have less work, there's more vacations, more free lunches, better culture, more beanbags, all of that things. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the reality, right? What's the downside? Okay, maybe you're losing on the opportunity to grow in your career, whatever it is, right? Like, I'm not saying that it's not, but what's realistically the odds that a company will offer you all those things in one package, and you're just going to be on your way and, happy forever? Now, most of the time you'll leave one company, you'll go to the next one, and you're like, okay, well, they'll pay me a little bit more, but the culture isn't as great, right? They expect me to be a little bit more on it and on money and things of that nature. And what I'm saying is that not that it's not possible or that that job isn't out there. And if you want to go out and chase it, go ahead. I'm not going to be the one stops you. And maybe, one of your friends just left one of your company, and his company, he truly feels like that his company is that way, but maybe that was right for them, right? Like, but before jumping shit, you got to understand what is it that you're looking for. And that understanding is going to allow you, the reason I love my job is because we have this mutual contract and it's agreed upon, right? And they fulfill that mutual contract, and I fulfill my part of it, and we're both happy with it, right? What is the culture like at your company? Is questions that you ought to ask. Or sorry, I'll cut that out. So those are the questions that you want to, those are some things that you want to think about, right? Like, what are you really looking for? Like, I get this question a lot from people in general. Like, what is the culture like at your company? In my mind, I'm always like, I don't know what that means. To be honest, I was just like, I have no clue what that means. And I've said that a couple of times now, but when I start somewhere, I see things as like we have a contract, right? The contract states that the companies expect this from me. This is what they expect me to do on a daily basis. They expect me to deliver this. And as long as I deliver those things, they will pay me. And I get some perks, that come along with that, like a couple benefits, maybe a couple massages over the course of the year, and they'll pay for my health insurance, stuff like that, right? And to me, I look at it as long as both parties respect their ends of the contract, to me, that's a good work culture. I don't need anything else, right? So, and then when I start going above and beyond, or they start going above and beyond, maybe we reevaluate that contract and we rediscuss, right? Maybe is it that like I'm getting a bonus, or am I getting a promotion? Whatever it is, we renegotiate that contract, and that to me is a fair and valid work culture. But maybe to you it's not, and that's okay. I'm not saying that that's how it should be. I'm just saying that's what it is to me. So I'm always so confused when people ask me like, what is the culture like? Because to me, I'm like, okay, well, one company you could be in, and like, okay, well, they go to lunch to happy hour every Friday, and then you go to the next one, and like, well, they go to happy hour 2 to 3 times a week, and that's a better work culture than this one, right? So it's so subjective. You got to understand what you're looking for. So when you go out and chase that new role, whether it's for money or the culture or whatever's important to you, just understand why and understand what that is. Like culture, this, that. It's such a vague thing. Money alone, such a vague thing, because it's like, well, money, but at the cost of what, right? Like, are you okay with extra time, extra this, extra that? And just figure out, what are you willing to trade off? Another issue with this idea of the Great Resignation is that it's almost bound to be a bubble that bursts, right? Like for whether it's for yourself, whether it's for the employers, it's almost unsustainable. And I'm not telling you to not, like, this is not an advice not to take the big job that's going to pay you $250K next year when you're making $100K this year, or, whatever, like adjust that for numbers that you're making right now. It's not to say that. It's just to say, be mindful before you go out and start living the 250K lifestyle. Understand that I don't know how sustainable this thing is, right? Like, maybe there is an adjustment that's coming at some point, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for employers. You really have to think about it. Think about being a 25-year-old, right? You're making 150, 200, 250. Where do you go from there? How much more can you truly make from there? Like, if you think about being like the top 1% of the population makes $450,000 a year. You're 25 making 250, and like, yeah, you can say like, oh, well, with inflation in a couple of years, the top 1% is going to make 600, 700, whatever it is. It's unlikely, right? Because it's still a small population that makes there. So if you think about being in there, and people that make that 450, usually they're in their 50s and 60s. So there's this huge gap. Well, normally you gradually work yourself up and you get yourself to a point where you're making those amounts of money. Well, now you're not. You don't even get an opportunity to make that amount of money at any point, just because, it's so, like how you even growing from there, right? Like, because people normally they start around a 50K, decent salary, or whatever, wherever they start, maybe sometimes 30K, 40K, 50K, and then slowly get raises and work themselves up to a position. But it's going to be very difficult to sustain a certain level of growth, even if it's just like a simple 4 or 5% growth annually, when you're starting at that point. And as a company, obviously, like, you get in a in a position where you need to toss these big salaries at people because you now need to compete with other companies. But what do you do when people, no longer earn you as much as you're paying them, right? Like, maybe you're paying people 300K, but they're only making you that entry level person. They're only bringing you 280K a year, but yet in order to retain talent, you need to pay that person in order to have someone to develop for the future. It's just, like I said, it's just not sustainable enough, where you have to really look at yourself and give yourself an honest, hey, is there a chance that this thing bursts? And like I said, in those times, it doesn't mean don't take the job. It's just be mindful, be very mindful of how you spend your money, be careful with how what lifestyle you're getting used to, because, a bubble is near. But yeah, the other point was, same thing when when some employee starts overperforming, right? How do you pay them differently? How is it that you're able to compete? Because, like I said, you're already paying them an extravagant amount of money, and over the long run, it's just hard to sustain, and could lead to a bubble. But honestly, I do hope I'm wrong in this situation. I'm just saying, I'm always the kind of guy that's like, okay, well, I'm going to pray for the best, but prepare for the worst, right? So I'm prepared if it happens. So I'm not going to live this crazy lifestyle, but at the same time, I'm understanding that this is the situation that we're in right now. Discussion number 2, right, was today is why you shouldn't pay attention to the Great Resignation. Well, simply put, people resign, they fire, they hire, they grow all the time. Whether you're an employee or an employee, you should focus on where you are right now, right? Like, as much as people want to make this Great Resignation this huge deal, it really isn't. It's stuff that happens every day. And comparison is probably one of the worst things that you can do in the financial world, right? People aren't always leaving for better situation. As humans, like, we're very emotional, and it's easy to just get caught up in, making an emotional decision, whether it's for positive emotion or negative emotion, right? We're emotional human beings, and that's how we react, and that's how we make a lot of our decision. Maybe you just got in an argument, like a negative one would be maybe you're just getting an argument with your boss and you're like, oh, well, I'm out, I'm gone, bye. Or maybe you just got done delivering a great presentation and you just feel like you can go and get paid more. And you're like, this is a positive emotional decision. And you're like, well, I deserve more, and like, let's go, let's get it, right? Both of those situations, you're like, okay, well, it's emotion speaking, and that's not always the right way to make decisions. Sometimes, you do have to trust your heart and how you're feeling at the moment, sorry, but not always. Sometimes you have to take a step back and really think about what you're doing. So imagine this situation. I'll just put a scenario in front of you just so you can illustrate this and illustrate how the emotional decision isn't always the best. So your friend, just got offered a position with a total package worth an extra $30,000, right? Like base plus commission or base plus bonus worth an extra $30,000 compared to where you are now. Your emotions may say, well, I'm just as good, I need to leave, but that position has, bigger quota, and so it's harder to attain, right? Like, it's harder to hit those bonuses and things of that nature. And it's a new product. Like, in this situation, we're imagining this is a sales position, by the way. So it's a new product. You need to sell the product, which is a 6-month ramp up period, just to get caught up and up to speed and to be able to start selling that product specifically. Now, your friend ends up not hitting their quota, and making a little bit less, which makes sense. It's their first year, right? And during this time, you're selling a product that you know of. You have a good team that invests in you. They like you, and you end up exceeding your quota. And 6 months later, you actually receive a promotion. Now, all these factors, you made way more money than if you would have jumped ship and decided to go, because your friend is just as good as you, right? Like, he's just as talented. Let's just imagine that. But so you made way more money, even though he had a better package that like came with the job like right off the bat. Um, but you put all these factors together, right? You would have lost if you were just chase based on your emotions. So before you jump, for whatever reason it is, just sit down, weigh the pros and cons. That's not to say never leave your job or anything like that. It's just weigh the pros and cons, and if it's the same, for leaders, like before you sprint to just grow, think about the fact that like, how is my current team doing, right? Do they feel empowered? Are they motivated? Are you getting the most out of it? Because if not, just adding another unmotivated person, it won't necessarily help the situation. Right? I don't always speak to leaders, but like a lot of times I hear people say like, oh, we're looking to grow. We're getting additional headcount. And I'm just like, well, to do what? Right? Because you have people on your team right now that aren't reaching their full potential, and you could actually do this job, whatever you're looking to do with growth, you can do it with the employees now. Maybe if you just pay them a little bit more or whatever it is, which would be a lot cheaper than hiring another person and things of that nature. So understanding what business need would the growth be serving. I hope this helps. But number 3 is obviously, how can you take advantage of this great resignation? Well, obviously, understanding what those areas of needs are is going to be a big part of that, right? I spoke about a couple weeks ago when I spoke about inflation. Jump into the areas where the demand is, where the areas that are inflating so much. Well, here, it's the same thing. Understand your worth. I spoke about it in the past. Probably going to make another episode about this, but keep track of your accomplishments and just know your worth overall. At any point, know what kind of business value you provide to a company. It's extremely important to know, because if you're going to position yourself even to stay within the same company, you need to know those things, and to grow within the company, you need to know those things, and you need to be able to make a business case for people. That's how, even if your boss doesn't necessarily care for them personally what business need you solve, right? But it is an impressive thing, and it makes it, especially if they like you, they take you a little bit more serious. It's easier case for them to make to their boss and to their boss and to their boss. Those are the reasons why you want to do these things. Use them, like I said, not only to leave your position, but also to remain in the same company, or get promoted, get more money, negotiate, new roles, new benefits, new anything. Understand your true value, right? So a big part, and I spoke about it when I spoke about how to increase your income in the corporate world, is people don't understand how much it costs companies to hire, to train, to ramp up new hires, right? Like, it takes a while before a person is really up and running and ready to go, ready to hit the ground running and really deliver at full capacity. So this gives you leverage, because realistically, even if you're technically an average employee, you're still too, the price tag to replace you is still too high. So it does give you leverage, and you do want to use that, to your advantage here. But anyway, I hope this makes sense. But that's essentially how you want to take advantage of that, and make sure like you understand, right? Like, why people resigning, what openings is that leaving up to, and how can I jump into some of those careers. But I want to start wrapping up here, because I hope, this part was helpful, but I don't like overwhelming people, obviously, when I do this podcast. But I want to say this, right? At the beginning of 2022, ZipRecruiter identified 700,000 open business-to-business sales positions. Now, I know that not everyone listening to this podcast works in sales, but I'm going to leave this information right here, right? It's there. You do whatever you want with it. You take it in and will do whatever. And they pay well. I'm just going to like I said, I'm just going to leave this information here, and you do whatever you want with it. But that's all I'm going to say. But there's a lot of work out there. There's a lot of roles. I know. I also want to be mindful that it's not a reality for everyone. That's why I don't really like this idea of this great resignation. But you guys get the gist. You guys get the point of the whole conversation. So I hope this was helpful at all. If it was, please make sure to share with someone, because that's the only way that this platform grows, really. Make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, rate, review. If you were kind enough to leave a review on whatever your favorite podcasting platform is, I would really appreciate it. And leave a 5-star rating and maybe a quick review so I know that you appreciate it. That's helpful. Comment down below if you found something helpful here. Those things, like I said, they're always really appreciated if you made it this far. Thank you so much. Make sure to follow us on social now that we're back. I'm going to go back into my TikTok inventory and try to pop out some dances really soon. So follow us on all social media. And as always, make sure that you're taking the steps today to ensure that you're 1% closer to your goals than you were yesterday. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. Have a great day.